Hello there, it's Zoe, and this is the midway point for Lead Strategy, our 90-day program, and a great opportunity to press pause and see how we're doing. In terms of when I'm recording this, what time of year, it is February the 6th, 2024, and also a good point to review strategy anyhow. So the two things are coming together in a timely fashion. What I'd like to cover today is some of the questions you can ask yourself about your strategy. Too often, I see organizations spend an enormous amount of time putting together a lovely strategy they can publish on their website and just park it. They get along or get on with doing their stuff and don't really integrate the strategy and its review practices into their leadership practices. So that's what we want to solve today, is how to fix that, making sure that your strategy is a live document and it's actually a verb, strategizing, and not just something you need to do once every few years. All right, so let me show you through the big framework, and we'll get to the very simple 9 questions you could ask to make sure that your strategy is working well for you. All right, so the whole process of developing strategy looks at focus, future, and feedback in the areas of why, your compass, where, your map, and how is your route plan. And there are 9 steps to take. You need to clarify your purpose, articulate your vision, and consider your impact. Then understand the context, generate ideas, make decisions around those options, craft a plan, take action, and course correct. It's so logical. It just totally makes sense. So that's how we go about designing and implementing a strategy. Like I said, though, it's not just a set and forget. It's something that we need to continue to visit time and time again. But here's another way of looking at the whole process of developing strategy. Results are why we do what we do. So we're going to do all this activity. Why is that important to us? Measures is to indicate whether or not we're on track, and also to know when we get there, how do we know we're successful? What does that look like? How do we know that we're staying on track? Targets are giving us ideas of what we could shoot for in terms of our results. Improvement initiatives are the projects, the activities that we're going to do to get there. And largely, this is what people mostly get excited about when it comes to strategy. We could do this, we could do that, we could do this, I'm like that. I had a whole bunch of different ideas for 2024. I'm like, I could do this, and I just had to press pause on the ideas and go back to the fundamentals: results, measures, targets, and then think about how do I actually fit all these ideas, or not all of them, some of them, into the container of my world, given the commitments I've got, the time I've got, etc. Next part is execution phase. What are your operational plans? Who's doing what, when, where, with what? Okay, right. Still with me, still logical sense. Hopefully you've done all of that work so far. So let's see where we're sitting in reviewing our strategy. I'll just take myself off screen so you can see that. First one is coming back to results. What does the end of the year look like? Have you done a mini sentence paragraph around what December 2024 looks like? Sounds like what I can see, touch, taste, hear, and feel the results. And if you're using the Big Amplifiers placemat, there is a section for that on the right-hand side of the big placemat that says, it is now 31 December 2024. This year was amazing because, and then you fill in that with a paragraph about what you will experience if all goes according to your aspirations and desires, the end game that you're shooting for and hopefully having fun with. So if you have that, next one is you ask the question, how can we tell if we're making progress? So this parallels the initial strategic planning process. Just need to make sure you have it in place. Do we have measures to see if we are making progress? So when I was doing this, reviewing my own strategy, I'm like, okay, what are my measures of success this year? I have some lag measures such as income. I also have some lead measures such as number of subscribers to show me if my universe, my planet Zoe, is growing or not. So make sure you have those in place. Now, let's take that a step further. What projects are we doing? So making sure that the projects we're doing are mapping against the results and our measures. So all those things, all those ducks are in alignment and things are working well. Next one is, what milestones do we have? So what are the critical junctures, either related to projects or measures, that we have in place to show that we have actually moving towards the direction that we want? Milestones for me, say, for example, are publication and launch of Olympus Bound, which is novel number 3 in the Gaia universe. And the other milestone I have is submission of the first draft of novel number 4, currently untitled because I can't figure out what to call it. Those are example of 2 milestones. Another milestone I have is the Leadership Conclave, which is coming up on March the 1st, the big event that's going to wrap up the first quarter of the year and launch us into the second quarter. Next one, and this is the one I think that often falls by the wayside for leaders. When are we checking our progress? So often it's like, oh, it's the end of the year, end of the financial year. There's a mad scurry to see how the financials work, but those are not the only measures of progress. And when we check our measures, when we check our data, it gives us signals. Are we progressing, or are we moving away from our end game? So we need to make sure we have a cadence of checking in, whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly. Do you have that in your diary? So let's get even more detailed around that. What data are you actually checking, and how are you collecting and analyzing it? Have you got a measures report and a methodology of gathering the data? This is also where I find leaders and organizations fall down. They have these grand aspirations, they develop measures, but they don't schedule in to check on progress. 2, they don't set up a system to collect the data. 3, if they do that, they don't sit down and analyze and ask the questions around, what is this telling us about our strategy, our strategic intent? Are we moving closer or further away from our desired goal? Number 7, this is also important. So zooming out of the tactical and strategic to the bigger picture. When are we popping our head above the parapet to see how the world is changing? Typically, people do that when they're about to write another strategy. So AKA every 3 years or so. And really, we need a much more regular practice of getting a sense of the pulse of the zeitgeist of what's happening out there and how it might be affecting us. So my recommendation is that you should be doing this monthly or quarterly to just check in, keep your eye on the horizon. Next question is, what events or trends are we monitoring? You might have some specific ones that are of interest to you. Of interest to me is the space industry. For my personal interest and also for my fiction writing novels, I want to see what happens about landing on the moon. So I'm checking what's happening with the Artemis mission. The Japanese put a lander on the moon recently, which is very exciting. I want to see what Elon Musk is doing with the brain-computer interface Neuralink. He's planted it in a live human. So I want to see how that tracks and progresses. That also I've written about in Olympus Bound, the novel that's coming out on May the 1st. So brain-computer interfaces, artificial intelligence, space race, these are all big parts of the trends that I'm following for my writing, my fiction world, and future of leadership. And some other trends I'm following are, what are the trends in leadership that leaders need to attend to? Things like environment, paying attention to ESG, environment, social, and governance factors. And another trend that's important for leaders is, how are leaders embracing taking care of well-being of their employees, and what's going on with the return to work, headquarters versus hubs, remote versus on-site conversation. So these are trends that are evolving and have a big impact on leaders and how the decisions that they make moving forward. Okay, so you need to know what you want to be following and then how you stay on top of it. And that comes to the last question. How do we stay on top of this trend? These trends. There's a number of different ways to do that. You can have Google Alerts. There is Shaping Tomorrow, which is an aggregated AI-driven website. They've put some barriers to accessing the information now, which is a pain in the bum. It used to be all open. They still have some things you can check out. Curating your own list through something like Google Alerts or RSS feeds is another way. I used to use Flipboard. I haven't gone back to that for a while because I was getting a lot of junk articles in there. So I also curate feeds on things like LinkedIn, so different followers that I follow, different newsletters on Substack. And a really easy and interesting one is ChatGPT. So I put in there, what are some trends that small to medium enterprises and their leaders need to pay attention to moving into the rest of this year. And they gave me a list of 5 things, which included some of the ones I mentioned to you. Now, caveat around that, it says up front in the response, well, based on the information, the last update was April 2023. So ChatGPT at that time when I did the recording was still 8 months behind the scene. So other things may have shifted. So depending on how up to date you want to be, or how much analysis you want to do, ChatGPT may or may not be the most useful thing. You can ask it for links to existing articles, and that may help, or you may need to do a Google search. Okay, so those are some ideas. Let me put the 9 questions back up for you. Here we go. Strategy health check. What does December 2024 look like? Make sure you have a paragraph written up and where you can read it daily to see if you're on track with that. How do you know if you're making progress? Have you got your measures in place? What are your projects? Are they planned out? Do you have your milestones? When are you checking in on your progress? Do you have your data and measures report ready to go? And when are you going to do the big picture, press pause, look above the parapet, to look at the events and trends, and making sure you're staying on top of that? That is your strategy health check. It doesn't have to be onerous. It's good to just keep refreshing that, because things actually do change. And we're in a year of lots of change with a number of different elections, both in Australia and abroad, which will have a big impact on how the world shows up. And what happens in the world trickles down and has an effect to wherever you are locally. Okay, that's it. Enjoy.